Good evening. I'm Ellison Barber in for Tom Llamas. We're following several breaking headlines as we come on the air. First, the U.S. releasing a new report saying Israel likely broke international law in its assault on Gaza. But the country has not violated terms of the U.S. weapons agreement. The State Department adding that wartime conditions have prevented them from finding enough evidence to justify withholding military aid. It comes as a ceasefire deal collapses following weeks of negotiations. That announcement coming as Israel's assault on the densely packed city of Rafah escalates. Palestinians seen running for their lives as airstrikes intensify. And today, the United Nations voting in favor of expanding Palestinian rights and backing a Palestinian bid for membership. The U.S., one of 9 nations voting against the measure. The resolution prompting this angered response from the Israeli ambassador. You can see him shredding the UN charter in protest of the vote. Israeli Defense Forces announcing Hamas fired off a barrage of rockets, striking a playground in a southern Israeli city. And tonight, NBC speaking with American medical volunteers working to save Palestinian lives. Their concerns about being trapped in the war-torn region as the Rafah border crossing is blocked off. More on that in just a moment, but first, NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel starts us off.
As Israel launched new attacks across Gaza tonight, the State Department issued a long-anticipated report that had the potential to block the flow of American weapons to Israel. It didn't. While the report was extremely critical of Israel's use of American-provided weapons and the high number of civilian casualties in Gaza, it stopped short of determining that Israel violated international humanitarian law, citing, in part, the complications of war to draw a conclusion. This week, President Biden warned directly that the U.S. would stop sending weapons if Israel launched a major offensive on the city of Rafah in Gaza. But in an interview with Phil McGraw, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu brushed it off, saying only Israel decides what's best for its security.
We've destroyed about 20 battalions of the Hamas's 24 terrorist battalions. We have another 4 to go there in Rafah, and that's why we want to go into Rafah, because we can't leave them there.
But this is what it looks like from the inside of the most dangerous city now in the Gaza Strip. Our crew in Rafah kept rolling as the Israeli military advanced and Palestinians ran for their lives. They're not sure where they're going, just away from the sounds of explosions. Our cameraman arrived at a narrow alley. Israel had just struck a building at the far end of it. He films as wounded children stream out, in some cases carried by other children. Israel says it's targeting Hamas with precision strikes. At the local hospital, medics treated more than 25 casualties. Most of them appear to have been children.
2 administration officials tell NBC News that defensive and offensive weapons, including small arms, are still flowing to Israel, with new shipments recently sent. Ellison?
Richard Engel, thank you. And as the Rafah border crossing remains closed, tonight dozens of American aid workers are trapped inside of Gaza. Those volunteers working to save lives as the violence closes in all around them. NBC's Raf Sanchez spoke to a midwife from California and a doctor from Michigan now desperate to get out.
It's been 4 days since Israeli forces seized control of the Rafah crossing. And since then, the border with Egypt has been firmly shut, cutting off the main lifeline for food, medicine, and fuel into Gaza. The UN warns that if the crossing doesn't reopen soon, aid operations inside the Strip will grind to a halt. But the closure hasn't just stopped relief getting in, it's also stopped people getting out, including dozens of American medical volunteers now trapped inside Gaza, like San Francisco midwife Bridget Rochios, who's volunteering at Al Amarati, Rafah's only functioning maternity hospital.
It is surreal to be supporting a woman giving labor while you're hearing bombs drop and machine guns fire.
Premature babies from across Gaza are rushed here, and the hospital warns that without more fuel, they may soon lose power for the incubators keeping them alive.
Everything is devastating, and it is counter to what birth should be.
Tonight, Rochios has no idea how or when she might leave Gaza.
While I am worried for my ability to leave and to get back to my family, I also am not unique or special in any way, shape, or form. There has been a siege on Gaza for a very long time.
Dr. Amar Ghanem from Detroit is at a different hospital, but in the same situation.
Are you basically trapped in Gaza right now?
We are ready to evacuate if we have opportunity. But at the same time, they are not telling us every day, say, okay, we don't have any news, we don't have any news.
The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem saying tonight this remains a complex situation with serious implications for the safety and security of U.S. citizens. Dr. Ghanem has been managing an ICU, facing a daily flood of wounded patients with few supplies to treat them. And many Palestinian medical staff forced to flee with their families following IDF instructions to get away from the fighting.
If you could speak to President Biden, what would you tell him?
I tell him, I beg you to stop this war today, okay, before tomorrow.
The doctor eager to get back to his family in Michigan.
My wife is almost like completely broke. My kids also, they always worry about me. And one of my kids, actually, he told me, I wish I did not allow you to go. But at the same time, I'm heartbroken about what's going on here. I don't want to leave before time and leave these people alone.
And Raf Sanchez joins us now from Tel Aviv. So, Raf, what is Israel saying about when the Rafah crossing might open and when some of these Americans might be able to leave?
So, Ellison, we asked Israel's military in terms of reopening the Rafah crossing. They said that was in planning, but they wouldn't give any firm timeline. Both of those medics you saw in the piece, they've been in Gaza for around 2 weeks volunteering. They're due to leave in the next couple of days. And at this point, it is just not clear how they are going to get out. One possibility, the Israeli military did tell us that they are open to potentially evacuating Americans through Kerem Shalom. That is another crossing which is open. It is normally used for goods, not for people. But the Israeli military says they might make an exception in this case. However, even if they agree to that, it's not clear how these Americans are going to get there safely, given that there is fighting raging near that crossing right now. Elson.
Raf Sanchez in Tel Aviv, thank you. We turn now to the U.S., where tensions over the war in Gaza continue to grow across college campuses. Tonight, police making new arrests, cracking down on pro-Palestinian protesters with graduation season well underway. So far, nearly 3,000 people have been arrested or detained. NBC's Liz Kreutz has the very latest.
As thousands of college graduates take the stage in celebration tonight, at other universities, a stark contrast with more arrests made by police breaking up pro-Palestinian encampments. At the University of Pennsylvania, police in riot gear physically removing demonstrators, detaining 33 people. And at the University of Arizona, law enforcement using tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse protesters. Police say rocks and water bottles were thrown at officers. Demonstrators still camped out on the stage where commencement usually takes place at Pomona College near Los Angeles, the school announcing it's moving the ceremony off campus. At Columbia, there will be no university-wide celebration this year, but smaller events got underway today away from the main campus.
I wish we were celebrating on Morningside campus today, but alas, we are not.
Meanwhile, at the University of Southern California, the school's pro-Palestinian valedictorian, Asna Tabassum, receiving her diploma at a smaller department ceremony today. USC canceled Tabassum's speech and ultimately their entire main commencement ceremony, citing security concerns. Some Jewish groups had voiced concerns over Tabassum's Instagram, which included a link to a website that calls for the abolishment of Israel.
Sad to hear her not speak. Honestly, I'd love to hear her.
Asna Tabassum.
At an event yesterday, Tabassum getting an ovation from her classmates. Today, Tabassum sharing what would have been her speech with the school newspaper. A majority of it she blacked out, sending a message that she was silenced.
And Ellison, this is where the encampment once was. Now it's filled with celebratory graduates. All around campus, there are signs warning students that anyone who is exceptionally disruptive today could be removed immediately. Ellison.
Liz Kreutz, thank you. Next tonight, the stage is now set in former President Trump's hush money trial for the most pivotal witness. Trump's ex-fixer, Michael Cohen, will take the stand on Monday as a witness for the prosecution. Cohen already making headlines, attacking Trump on social media, even drawing a warning from the judge. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has the latest fireworks.
Tonight, NBC News learning from multiple sources prosecutors will call their star witness Michael Cohen on Monday. He called himself Donald Trump's fixer, now a vocal Trump critic. Cohen unleashing on his old boss in his book and on social media, spotted online this week wearing a T-shirt depicting Mr. Trump behind bars. The judge today directing prosecutors to inform Cohen that the judge is asking him to refrain from making any statements about the case or Mr. Trump, but not placing a gag order on Cohen. Mr. Trump remains under one, barring him from attacking witnesses and the jury.
It's a disgrace. It's not a case. There's no crime. There is no crime, and they failed to show a crime.
Cohen, a critical witness for the prosecution, as the jury has now read his text messages, heard his voice, and seen evidence that he paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 just days before the 2016 election so she couldn't derail the campaign. The defense says her story of sex with Mr. Trump was false, a shakedown for money brokered by Cohen, making his testimony and credibility on the stand essential. Mr. Trump has pleaded not guilty to the charges of illegally disguising his reimbursement checks to Cohen, his former attorney, as, quote, legal expenses to cover his tracks. The face-off between the presumptive GOP nominee and Cohen likely to be one of the most dramatic of the trial. Cohen comes with baggage, including previous convictions for campaign finance violations and lying under oath. Meanwhile, today, the jury hearing more from former Trump aide Madeleine Westerhout, who sat outside the Oval Office and confirmed Mr. Trump met with Cohen at the White House in 2017, where prosecutors say they devised their reimbursement scheme. But she testified the former president signed checks without reviewing them first, contrary to what Mr. Trump said in his book and other witnesses said at trial.
And Laura Jarrett joins us now in studio. So, Laura, how do you think the witnesses today helped, or did they help, set the stage for Michael Cohen's testimony come Monday?
Well, Allison, they might not be the most riveting, but they are the essential building blocks, providing the foundation of what prosecutors hope Cohen will testify about as soon as next week. We're talking about the invoices, the checks, the vouchers, all of the things that the state says were allegedly falsified in service of trying to cover up the hush money payments that were made to Daniels. Of course, Mr. Trump didn't make the payment to Daniels. Cohen did. And so that's why his testimony is going to be so key. It's why they're bringing in all of his cell phone records. It's why they're bringing in a rep from Verizon, because they need all of that evidence in the record before they even get to Cohen.
And Laura, Trump keeps complaining about the gag order that he is under. Michael Cohen is not, as of now, under a gag order. How will that gag order for Trump work come Monday if the key witness here is not under the same gag order?
It's been a point of contention since day one. Everyone knows that they have had this very public falling out. But because Mr. Trump cannot attack Cohen, it's because he's the defendant, right? He's the one who was actually charged by a grand jury, not Cohen. But Cohen is not making prosecutors' job any easier, because everything that he tweets, every mocking statement, every T-shirt that he wears with the former president behind bars is fodder for cross-examination, and they're going to use it, Allison.
NBC's Laura Jarrett, thank you. Now for a preview on what Michael Cohen's testimony could mean for the former president's hush money trial, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Sinadella. Angela, let's just pick up where we left off with Laura there, because this whole idea of who's under a gag order and what it means is fascinating to me. And Michael Cohen is not under a gag order, but have his social media posts, his TV appearances, the T-shirts he's been wearing, have those actions potentially compromised his testimony?
Yeah, so it's interesting. He is not under any sort of a gag order, but actually him talking is hurting the prosecution. But when you think about what his goals are, they seem to be to want to help the prosecution. So he is really compromising his own goals there by doing so. Because anytime you have a post or a tweet, as we just saw from the cross with Stormy Daniels, that can be brought up by the defense. And then you look like you have a different motive, you have hatred, you have bias. And so your credibility on that stand depends on whether or not the jury believes you're telling the truth, and whether or not you have no outside motive. So all these posts are really muddying that, Ellison.
So the prosecution has said they only have 2 more witnesses. Obviously, Michael Cohen was kind of the big name, quote unquote, star witness for this trial. But does the fact that they don't plan to bring more people forward, and other big names like Karen McDougal, they weren't brought to the stand, does that mean that the prosecution feels confident in where their case is?
I think it means that they feel they've done this whole spiral. So they've set up just this incredible context here. And it's literally a spiral that all ends with Michael Cohen. It starts and it ends with him. So everything else essentially has been context and corroboration. And that's why, as you described it, as pivotal, that's exactly what it is. This case will live and die with his words. And it's because he is the only one in this entire case who can pinpoint Trump at the center of it all. It is a money case where Trump allegedly gave money to Cohen, who gave money to Davidson, who gave money to Stormy Daniels. But even Davidson, Stormy's own lawyer, testified he never even talked to Trump. Stormy didn't talk to Trump about this. So the only person who can put Trump in the middle of all of this, which because he's the defendant, he has to be put into this, is Michael Cohen.
I mean, obviously his testimony is incredibly important for the prosecution. How will we know who it is favoring? That moment where you're like, this is good for the prosecution, or this is shifting for the defense. What do you expect to hear, and what should we watch for to see who he's helping?
So the prosecution will be pretty straightforward. To some degree, we've heard a lot of Cohen's words before. He wrote a book about it. And so none of that will be a huge surprise. The moment that we will know what is the landscape is when the defense does the cross there. And if Cohen starts to crumble, if Cohen starts to show that his bias, his motivations are so strong, if he starts attacking Trump up there. Now, you might think that's obvious. We all know Trump hates that Cohen hates Trump. But if he gets up there and he just loses it and starts going on the attack, or starts showing real inconsistencies, which we've also seen before, right? He said under oath previously that he didn't do this, that Trump was not involved, and now he is involved. So these inconsistencies, if the defense is able to pull them through, is where we'll see the whole case turn. But then, of course, the prosecution could have a redirect. They could go back there. They could corroborate this. They could bring him back up. So it'll likely be a roller coaster, Allison.
All right, and it all starts Monday for this wave of it, if you will. Angela Cinadella, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and insights, as always. Now to the severe weather threat tonight in the South, hit hard yet again by devastating storms. Brunswick, Georgia, slammed by 70 miles an hour winds, taking down power lines and toppling over trees. And in Johnson City, Texas, monstrous hail raining down in the region, one rare hailstone measuring a whopping 5 inches. NBC's Priya Sridhar has more from the ravaged region.
Toppled trees and scattered construction equipment. Tonight, Tallahassee, the latest in a line of cities cleaning up from severe weather this week. At least one woman is dead from the storms after a tree fell on her home. Suspected tornadoes, hail, and powerful thunderstorms roared through the city early this morning, leaving 70,000 in the dark. Carl Whittington was describing the storm to us.
I looked out the window, and it's just white.
When another tree fell behind his home.
There goes my big pine tree in the backyard.
The big top at Florida State University's famous high-flying circus was ripped apart, leaving the 75-year-old student act without a place to perform.
Alarms started going off, and then you could hear the wind really howling.
The deadly week-long severe weather outbreak has devastated families from Michigan to Tennessee. Like Brianne Lovett, last night we told you she was still looking for her mother. Tonight she's learned her mom, 67-year-old Cheryl Lovett, died.
She was wonderful. You couldn't make her mad. She was always smiling.
And back here in Atlanta, crews are still working to clear down trees. But the good news, Ellison, is this storm system will finally move off the Atlantic coast tonight, giving us a break from this extreme weather, at least for the next few days.
Priya Sridhar, thank you. And as Priya just mentioned, that area might get some relief soon. So let's get right to NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, since Monday, there's been more than 1,500 total storm reports in that region alone. Have we seen the last of it for now?
A little bit of a break. Sunday, it returns to Texas a little bit, but nothing as bad as what we've seen. These are all the storm reports from today. And what a morning. I mean, horrific morning in Tallahassee, Florida. They had 70-mile-per-hour winds go through, possibly a tornado. So they're still cleaning up from that mess. And then this afternoon, this evening, we've watched all of the severe weather in eastern North Carolina. It's finally heading out through the Outer Banks. It looks like Wilmington all the way down here. Severe thunderstorm warning for the Myrtle Beach, especially North Myrtle Beach. This will be closing in on you shortly. Once this passes passes off the coast, we end our severe weather threat, Allison, and we finally can catch our breath. Tomorrow, we're pretty much severe weather free across the country.
And I know you are also tracking a severe geomagnetic storm. I have been fascinated by this concept all day. What is it? What are you watching?
This appears to be like once in like 20, 30, 40-year event. Let me show you the pictures from Europe, because it is incredible what we're seeing. And this is even at southern latitudes. I mean, we're seeing this in northern Italy, England right now. Even outside of London, they are seeing the northern lights. So as soon as the sun sets in the northern half of our country, you're going to see pictures like this when you go outside. If you're not right in the heart of a city, you're going to see really incredible stuff. So let me show you this image. This is from the top of Matterhorn. So this is in Switzerland. Incredible colors. It's all a lot of pinks and a lot of purples. You see a little bit of green out there on the bottom. You can see this is from Germany, and you can see these pillars here. I mean, it's just a really incredible show. So this is midnight to about 4 a.m. is going to be the peak, but it's already great out there right now. I'm saying from Atlanta northwards, Oklahoma City northwards. If it's on your bucket list, Allison, go look at it tonight. This may be one of your only chances.
That is amazing. Okay, I have to ask you two before you go. It is Mother's Day Sunday.
Right.
A lot of people want to have outside days with their moms, with loved ones. How's the forecast?
Yeah, as usual, it's not going to be perfect everywhere. We're going to see a lot of rain, especially in Texas and Louisiana. That looks like to be kind of the worst of it. But we are going to have some great weather in a few spots, especially the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes. Much of all of the West is going to look good. But unfortunately, it's breakfast in bed, maybe a movie marathon type day with the rain from Texas to Kansas. And unfortunately, Elson, here in New York, too.
All right. Bill Cairns, thank you. We appreciate it. Still ahead tonight, the deadly bus crash overseas. Surveillance video capturing the moment a bus in Russia veers off of a bridge into a canal. What we're learning tonight about the driver. Plus, the major shakeup for the Houston Police Department after it was revealed the agency failed to investigate more than 200,000 cases, including thousands of sexual assault cases. The abrupt move by the department's chief this week. And Target announcing some stores will not carry Pride merchandise this year. What the company says is behind the controversial move. Stay with us. Back now with a major development in Houston, where the chief of the nation's fifth largest police department abruptly retired this week. The move coming amid intense scrutiny into the department, which failed to investigate more than 200,000 cases since 2016, citing a lack of personnel. Thousands of those cases, including reports of sexual assault, not investigated. NBC's Stephen Romo reports.
A major shakeup for the country's fifth largest police department. Houston Police Chief Troy Finner abruptly retiring amid an investigation into hundreds of thousands of cases that were dropped, including sexual assault allegations due to lack of staffing.
I'm very confident it was in the best interest for Houston, the department, and for Chief Finner.
Back in February, Finner revealed to the public for the first time that since 2016, more than 264,000 cases were never investigated because officers had the option of using internal code SL, meaning suspended for lack of personnel.
We added additional investigators in 2018. We added additional investigators in 2021.
The Houston Police Department has just 2 officers for every 1,000 residents as of March of this year. For comparison, Chicago is about the same size and has 4 officers for every 1,000 people. Finner said he first learned the code was being used in 2021.
At that time, I directed Special Victims Division to stop using this code.
But emails obtained by our Houston affiliate KPRC show Finner referencing the lack of personnel code 3 years prior in 2018 while he was an assistant chief. The station pressing him about that email.
It's something that I didn't know about, and I definitely didn't remember that.
Up to 4,000 of those uninvestigated cases involved sexual assault allegations, according to the department, due to the code, which law enforcement experts say is unusual.
Typically, if it is a violent crime against a person, those cases are assigned, period.
The department posting on X that all the adult sexual assault cases were reviewed, but 3,500 of them have no leads, though noting those could be reopened if potential victims come forward with additional information.
The more time that goes by, the more evidence, witnesses become stale, right? Is this information still good?
But in a state where as many as a third of adults are sexual assault survivors, this is about more than just numbers. It's about lives. HPD confirming it learned a survivor of one of those suspended cases died by suicide when officers went to follow up.
And Ellison, the department is now saying that SL code suspended for lack of personnel is no longer in use. They say it's no longer an option for officers. Meanwhile, the mayor did launch an independent investigation upon finding out about all of this, and the preliminary results of that, those are expected next week.
We're back now with Top Stories news feed, and we start overseas with a deadly bus crash caught on camera. Surveillance video shows a bus in St. Petersburg, Russia, crashing into another vehicle before veering over the edge of the bridge and into a canal. At least 3 people were killed and several hurt. Rescue crews pulling other passengers from the water. No word on what caused the initial crash, but Russian media reporting the driver of that bus has been detained. Back here at home, Target is reducing the number of stores carrying its Pride-themed merchandise following anti-LGBTQ+ backlash last year. The retailer confirming that some of its stores will not carry its Pride Month collection. The items prompted some hostile customers to knock down displays and angrily approach employees last year. LGBTQ+ advocacy groups calling Target's decision disappointing. And a massive hospitality strike in Las Vegas on Mother's Day weekend. 700 workers walking off of the job at Virgin Hotels. They're calling for wage increases and greater job protections. It's the first time the hotel has been the subject of a culinary and bartenders union strike prompted by their contract expiring last June. Virgin Hotels accused the union of unfair labor practices and filed the charge with the National Labor Relations Board. Staying overseas now into the catastrophic flooding in Kenya. Overwhelming floodwaters slamming the country and other parts of East Africa, killing more than 200 people and displacing more than 200,000. Kenya's president declaring today a public holiday to mourn the victims of the ongoing disaster. For more on this tragedy and the state of Kenya's most vulnerable populations, I'm joined now by Kennedy Odede. He is the founder and CEO of SHOFCO. That's a grassroots organization based in Kenya's Kibera neighborhood, the largest urban slum in Africa. Kennedy, I know you are joining us now from Nairobi, from Kenya. This is your country. This is the community where you work. It is your home. And these torrential rains and floods, they have just been some of the most catastrophic in the country in years. Talk to us about what it is like right now for you, for your family, for your organization, and the people you're trying to help.
Thank you so much. So it's been tough as someone who grew up in the slum. And I don't feel really sad because this climate change impact is happening to us. And these people were really poor, you know. Just understand this a little bit. So when you live in a slum, if there are a lot of what is called pit latrines, there is no running water inside. So the issue is that when you get overflooded, there's a chances of you getting sick because of the sanitation. So it's been tough. We have been facing people, some of our people have died, and people are confused. It's a really bad moment for Kenya. It never happened before in our lifetime, if I remember that. So it's so bad, mostly so bad for the poor people who live below $2, you know? So it's coming more like just like COVID now. So people are going through a lot here now. So we are living in a very, very bad time. At the same time, this is a time we are looking for the local organization to come in. So SHOFCO has been working with our communities in Kibera and other slums in Kenya to give food, to offer our buildings as a safe place, as many people have lost their homes. So we are living in a tough moment. Yes.
When you are on the ground, what do you see as the greatest needs for the people in Kenya right now? And SHOFCO, I mean, as you said, you have been doing this for over 2 decades, working in these communities, but with over 200,000 people in need right now, that's too much work for one organization alone. Is the government there doing enough to help? Is the international community paying enough attention to what's happening in Kenya right now?
We don't get enough attention, and I think the government is trying to make sure that people don't live by the river banks, right? So that's the thing, and the question is that where do they live? So that's the problem. So people don't have housing. Right now, people have no beddings, no food. Honestly, it's more about basic needs that many Americans can take for granted. That's what our people are looking for. And as SHOFCO, we're trying to mobilize resources through American friends and partners to give food, beddings, and ensure that, and medicine. Because for me, that's the biggest challenge they're facing now. Yeah, and they're living in fear. And to make it sad is that most of the young people here came through climate change again in their villages. They were looking for jobs because of the drought, coming to look for jobs in the city. And now this happens. So you can see how they're feeling so devastated.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned those evacuations. I know the government there in Kenya started bulldozing homes in flood-prone areas where people had been evicted. And a lot of people were saying, look, you gave us about $75 US to relocate. It's not enough, and we don't know where to go. Your group is there trying to help all of those people. But you touched on something I know your organization has worked a lot on over the years, is that these extreme weather events are, in your view, the biggest threat to the world's most vulnerable communities, and they're going to keep happening with climate change. Talk to us about the long-term measures that you and SHOFCO have helped to develop to try and curb that. And is what's happening right now, in your mind, a wake-up call that more needs to be done as climate change continues to escalate and create more of these situations?
To be honest with you, this is a very wake-up call to the government of Kenya, honestly, because they have to have a plan. You know, most of the things that happen, there's a river passed through Kibera that has never been cleaned. You know, the dams were overflowing. So I think the government have to do that. And also as a country, we have to start planting trees. Right? It's very important. And then I think SHOFCO is doing is we are going back and trying to work on water saving. You know, right now, there's a lot of water, right? Very soon there will be drought. So it's a challenge for us. So we think that how do we plan this in future? How do we make sure people don't live in those where there's rivers? We also have to make sure we give them jobs. You know, you cannot tell someone to leave this place. Where do they go? So I think we start to have a proper planning now. I feel, and I'm so sad, that the most poor people on earth are the one affected by the climate change. People who never been on the flight. People who never been on the plane. It's so sad for me. So I hope the big world, the China, the America, please, we are tired because it is affected on the ground. And every time people talk on a high level, they don't do practical things that can solve problems. So this is a time that it is real and the poor are suffering and they are asking that, please include us on the table. Let's be part of the planning. Otherwise, it's a zero game.
Kennedy Odede, founder and CEO of SHOFCO, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching Top Story. I'm Ellison Barber in for Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More News Now is on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.